Hey everybody, welcome back to Doc's Autos. Today, hopefully we're going to wrap up the rebuild of our 2015 BMW X5. We've got a couple of things left to do. One is reassemble everything, but before that, we have to go ahead and finish prepping our front bumper and fender. So when we left off last, we worked on getting this prepped, sanded, painted, and cleared. And for me, this feels super smooth, but if you can see in the light, we do have a little bit of orange peel to address. Not much compared to the Fiesta stuff over there. If you want to go look at that video, go up here somewhere. But the orange peel on here, I think, is far less than the Ford was. But this also was really difficult to paint in here around these nooks and crannies in this hole for the fog lights, trying to get in these nooks and crannies for our cutouts for the grills, and then of course up here, trying to spray in here without getting any runs, which thankfully I didn't get any runs or sags in the paint or the clear. So if I manage to do that without issue, then I'll be okay trying to work through a little bit of orange peel. And you know, it's been years since I've done any paint work, and probably my second time, I think, actually using a gun. So, yeah, turned out pretty good, I think. We've started working on the fender, and let me show you what we've got. We have this wonderfully cut and buffed area here, but that's just kind of the start. I run over the area, this area, actually the whole fender, with 1,000 grit and then 1,500, trying to knock down some of this orange peel here. You can see where it's a little uneven. Very similar if you were sanding out guide or primer and had a guide coat on here. We're just looking for where the clear coat is still shiny. That just means you've got a little bit of material to knock down yet. And trying very hard not to go too deep or too hard and cut off back down to the primer like I did here in the corner. So have to be careful with that. But basically, after you get this thing hit with the sandpaper, wet sanding, you go over it with some compound. I'm using the Meguiar's Heavy Cut, I believe it is. There we go. Yep, there we go. The Heavy Cut Pro Speed. And then we're going to hit it with the swirl remover, the number 9. And last, we're going to finish it off with the ammo skin, and then probably ceramic coat the entire car in the reflex. So what I've done here is gone through, like I said, up to the 1,500 grit. And it's kind of tough to see in the camera, but you can see a little bit of fine scratches in here yet, and I'm not entirely happy with that. So what I'm going to do is go over the area again here. I've got 2,000 and 3,000 grit, and then that should allow me to go back over with my buffer, my DA, and get this thing polished out. I did go ahead and finally order a 3 or 4 inch smaller mini DA, because there's some areas in here specifically around this cutout for the brake venting and up here, and especially over on the fender. Down in these areas here and in here, you know I'm not going to be able to get my big 6 inch or 7 inch, whatever this thing is, in those tight spaces. Just my basic Harbor Freight DA. Works great for hoods, panels, roofs, everything else like that, but that smaller fine area, it's not going to fit into. So that's going to show up, and then we'll be able to go ahead and finish getting in those small spaces. And actually, I think it comes with a 4 inch extension, so I can really get into those deep spots where the fog lights go and where the little grills go down by the chin skirt. So I'm not going to take you through the entire process, because really it's going to be a lot of hours of just wet sanding and nothing. So I'll give you a quick overview of the concept here, and then we'll come back when these pieces are wrapped up and ready to assemble and put back on the car. Alrighty, I'm just going to start out here with my 1,500 grit. I've got just a little green scuff pad behind it. I want to avoid using a hard block because that's just going to cause me to go through the clear really quickly. But I don't want to use just my bare fingers because that's going to be way too small of a contact area and will just not leave things smooth. So the scuff pad or kitchen sponge, Scotch-Brite pad, whatever you want to call it, gives you just enough, I think, form and support behind here, but still contour over some of these areas, especially when we get down here where the front of the fender is and working around by the wheel arch here. So there's a lot of ways to do this. Some people may say you're always going to want to run a hose over it. I don't have a floor drain, so I've got my spray bottle here to keep things wet. Some people are going to say you've got to use a hard block. Some people say use this or that, the other thing. Use what works for you. If you want to check out somebody who really knows what they're talking about, go check Brian over out on Paint Society and watch some of his videos. He's got a lot of great technique over there as well. But this is what works for me, and it's what I have access to. So again, we're kind of going with the what can you do, what can the average person do at home in their garage or a small shop without having thousands of dollars of professional supplies and gear. Me, I got a squirt bottle from the home store, some Duragold sandpaper off of Amazon, which I've used in all my other projects and it's been working great, and a kitchen scrubby. So let's just get to it. Like I said, we're just going to give a real quick rundown here. Not going to do the entire panel for you, but wet it down. It's going to take my sandpaper and go over the surfaces again lightly. You don't want to push on it. That's going to cause you to push through the clear, crater it out. You just want to lightly work with what's here. Stay away from the edges a little bit because, as I said before, I got a little close over here and wore off the edge. So I had to touch that up. And you'll be able to knock out a lot of this with your high-cut buffing compound too when you come back. So, like again, I'm just running over all these surfaces. And since I've already hit this with the 1500, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. Just kind of give you the motion here. And again, with sanding, you want to go ahead, go one direction and then change your path so you're not getting grooves, especially if you're going to lay down anything with metallic in it. You don't want to have any grooves or troughs that that metallic flake can sit in. Otherwise, it's going to look pretty bad. You can just kind of see what I'm doing here. It's not rocket science by any means. So once you've gotten the whole panel hit with this 1500, I'm just going to grab my 2000. Again, same deal, just 2000 grit, wrap it around my sponge. Wet this down, re-wet my panel. Again, we're going lightly. We just want to work any of that orange peel off of the panel. And also the lines from sanding with the heavier grit paper. You can kind of hear where I've hit before with the sandpaper or the polish, because this sounds nice and smooth. Or if I go over here, you can definitely hear more of a coarse or an abrasive sound as I'm cutting a little more of that off. You can see down here in the light, hopefully, just a little bit of remnants left with that orange peel. And that's what I'm trying to sand down so everything has a uniform, dull color to it. And it can be difficult to tell between what's wet or what's dry and shiny. So that's why you've got to dry off your panel once in a while, re-wet it down and see where you still have. Again, I'm going to grab my 3000 grit now. Wet that down, hit my panel again. And just keep working over these areas. Edges you kind of want to stay away from. These corners and curves are kind of tough. You want to stay away from those if you can. Those will round off sooner than anything else, and you'll be back to your primer, and then you'll have to patch that up. So I'm just going to keep working away on this panel, and I'll come back when I have it all wet sanded down and we're ready to go ahead and hit it with that Meguiar's 100 compound, the swirl remover, the number 9, and then our final polish. So I'll be doing this for quite a while, but when I come back, it'll be all done and pretty looking. All right, well, you can see right here, we've got this panel sanded down. We went down to the 3000 grit, and overall there's a few spots, like right up here, still a little shiny. You can definitely tell there's some orange peel here, but this is getting way too close to the end, and you can see I already cut through it again, so I've got to touch that up once again. So I'm going to leave this. I'm going to hit it with the polisher and see if that comes out. It should, but most of the other areas here look really good by and large. Again, I try to stay away from the edges, try to stay away from this point here as much as possible. And depending on your paint job and the quality of the original paint, how that laid down, and your clear coat, you may have more, you may have less cutting and buffing here to do. So me, I would say this was probably more orange peel than most of your good painters would say is acceptable. In fact, I shared a few pictures out on the face tubes in some of the groups I'm in for restoration and car work, and some of the comments were encouraging. Hey, that's great. You know, you're learning. Here's some advice for how to improve in the future. And some jackhole said sand it off and start all over. Well, that's fine if you don't have a budget. I have a budget because, well, I had to spend an extra $300 and some on a camera, more on the light fixture, and a bunch of other parts I hadn't planned to, you know, spend money on. So, yeah, if you don't have a budget, great. Sand it down, redo it, whatever. Keep your jerkish comments to yourself. But for anybody else who gave an encouraging comment and how to improve, awesome. That's what the community is about. Not to cut other people down, but give words of encouragement, advice, help people grow and learn. And if you can learn anything from me, learn, do a better paint job. So we're going to grab the DA now and throw some of that Meguiar's compound on and see if we can't bring back some shine on this. Now, if you look carefully, you can see a little bit of cross hatching in here, and that's fine. That's going to buff out. The comment I made a few minutes ago about your wet sanding and cross hatching to make sure you're not going to have grooves cut in from straight sanding, your metallics to fall into, well, that's fine. That's for sanding primer. We've already sanded and primed and sprayed our paint, so that comment was more geared towards priming and paint prep, not the actual paint itself. So sorry to lead you astray or speak out of order. So yes, cross hatching is great all around, but we already have sprayed, so any metallics we would have had fall into grooves have already fallen into those grooves. But luckily, when I got done spraying, everything looked pretty good. I didn't really even have any tiger striping, which also is an issue with spraying metallics. If you're spraying too heavy or thin in some areas, you'll have stripes down your paint job. I also sprayed crossways too, so I did a coat this way, and then a coat this way to help minimize any of that striping that might show up. And I think, by and large, it turned out pretty good. Anyways, back to what I was talking about. Let's get that polisher out with some of that compound on there and lay just a little bit down. Got just a few dabs on here. I'm just going to work this area just as an example and show you what it's going to come back to with just a little bit of work. And we're not going to push the grinder or the DA in here. We're just going to set it and let sort of its own weight do its thing. And we're set about 1800 RPMs. Depending on the product you use, it'll tell you what speed to set your polisher on. And we're using the Meguiar stuff, so here we go. throw a little more on here. You don't want to end up going too fast or using too little product, or you'll end up burning through your clear and back down to your paint, and there you start over again. Alrighty, we're gonna let this dry and then come back and buff it off with a microfiber towel. If you want and have a different DA with a foam pad or something, sheep's wool, whatever it is, you can go ahead and use that too. I just got the good old rag from Harbor Freight. All right, a few minutes have passed. We'll go and buff this out. And I'll probably do this again once it's on the vehicle where I've got some actual backing behind me. Alrighty, for a first pass, that looks pretty good. I've got a little bit of a spot in here I've got to go through and hit again. You can see it's kind of dull. But right up here you can see definitely a whole lot better. The orange peel that was there is nearly gone. You can see my reflection in it. You can almost see your reflection in it. Hey, look at that. There you are. Look at that. So it's not something you can rush and get done in 20 minutes, especially if you're doing an entire car or even a panel. I mean, this is probably going to take me, but when it's all said and done, probably an hour and a half to do. I've been at it about 50 minutes, 45 minutes. So, you know, again, if you've had less orange peel, you might be done by now. Me? That's what I got. So we're going to keep working on this. Then we're going to go ahead and work on that front bumper over there. Yep, there it is. There's the Ford parts. Those had more orange peel on them. Those I probably should sand down, but I'm out of paint. Anyway, when we come back, we'll have these two panels done, or the fender and the bumper, all done, polished up. Probably not ceramic coated, but at least our first run with the Meguiar's and swirl remover. And then we'll move on to getting the parts that go on them, and then get those on the car. And that's gonna be it. I'm still waiting on the recall for the EGR stuff. I have no ETA on that. So until then, we're gonna have a pretty shiny lawn ornament to look at, because I really don't want to drive it and have it catch on fire. That seems kind of like a waste. Anyways, we're gonna get this wrapped up and we'll come back.